Good job.
Caution, terrain. Terrain. Pull up. Terrain.
There are moments in aviation history where voice recordings remain that mark the past. Today, I want to share with you not only the stories of these accidents, but also the actual audio of the tragic moments. Today, I will present 5 aviation disasters revealed by real cockpit audio recorded seconds before impact. Starting with one that was recorded minutes before it was struck by a missile, we're talking about Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752. On January 8, 2020, Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752 departs Tehran's Imam Khomeini International Airport. The Boeing 737-800 has just taken off. Engines are stable. The climb is smooth. Inside the cockpit, the pilots speak calmly. Standard callouts, normal procedures. Nothing suggests danger. Then, just minutes after liftoff, something changes. The CVR records a sudden interruption, a sharp sound, unlike turbulence, unlike any system alert. The pilots react instantly, questioning what they just felt. The aircraft continues climbing, but the cockpit atmosphere shifts. The crew begins to scan instruments. They don't see a mechanical failure, no engine fire, no loss of control. Another sound follows, louder, more violent. The pilots' voices rise slightly. They discuss the possibility of a technical issue. One of them suggests returning to the airport. There is no panic, only confusion. The aircraft is still flyable. The CVR captures one of the pilots attempting to communicate. They try to assess damage. They are running through possibilities, but none of them fit what they're experiencing. Seconds later, the recording captures a catastrophic event. A massive explosion overwhelms the microphones. The cockpit fills with noise. Communications stops. There is no Mayday call, no final message, no warning to air traffic control. Moments later, the recording ends as Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752 breaks apart in the night sky and crashes near Tehran. All 176 people on board are killed. When investigators later listened to the cockpit voice recorder, one fact became terrifyingly clear. The pilots never knew what was happening. There was no system failure, no cockpit error, no loss of situational awareness. The aircraft had been struck by surface-to-air missiles. Iran's air defense system, on high alert after rising military tensions, mistakenly identified the civilian airliner as a hostile target. 2 missiles were launched within seconds. The CVR confirms the timeline. The first missile damaged the aircraft, but did not destroy it. The pilots were still alive, still trying to understand the situation. The second missile ended any chance of survival. For days, officials denied responsibility. Mechanical failure was suggested. Human error in the cockpit was implied. But the black boxes told the truth. The recordings proved the crew had no warning and no opportunity to react. They were victims of a military mistake, not an aviation one. The consequences were global. Airlines immediately rerouted flights away from conflict zones. International pressure forced Iran to admit responsibility. Families demanded accountability, transparency, and justice. The accident reignited a critical debate in aviation. Why civilian aircraft are still allowed to fly over active military regions? Historically, Flight 752 became a symbol of the deadly intersection between aviation and geopolitics. The voices captured on its CVR were calm, professional, and completely unaware that they had been placed in a war zone without their consent. Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752 was not a failure of pilots or technology. It was a failure of judgment on the ground. And the silence at the end of the recording remains one of the most haunting moments ever preserved in aviation history. And although the accident you just saw was horrible, the next one was worse, because the pilot reported problems until it was too late. Next, you will see the story and recording of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302.
Caution, terrain. Terrain. Pull up. Terrain.
The cockpit voice recorder captures more than sounds. It captures confusion, urgency, and the exact moment when control begins to slip away. On the morning of March 10, 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 lifts off from Addis Ababa. The Boeing 737 MAX 8 is climbing normally. Engines sound steady. Nothing feels unusual. Then, seconds after takeoff, the first warning appears. In the cockpit, one of the pilots notices inconsistent readings. Airspeed doesn't match altitude. Something feels wrong, but there's no clear failure. The aircraft is still climbing. Suddenly, the nose begins to push down. The pilots react instantly. Control column pulled back, thrust increased. The aircraft responds briefly. Then it happens again. The CVR records growing tension in their voices. They're no longer discussing routine flight parameters. Now they're questioning the airplane itself. Why is the nose pitching down? Another warning sounds. Another correction. Another forced descent. The pilots begin to realize the aircraft is doing something they did not command. Their voices become sharper, faster. They call out speeds, altitude, configuration. They disable the autopilot. But the nose drops again. At this point, the CVR captures something chilling. Urgency without understanding. The pilots are fighting, but they don't know what they're fighting against. The aircraft accelerates. Speed increases far beyond normal climb values. The pilots pull harder. The control forces grow heavier. The airplane feels like it's resisting them. They try to stabilize. Seconds pass. Then, another sudden pitch down, more aggressive than before. The pilots call out for help. They discuss procedures. They try to regain control manually. But the system activates again. The CVR records the sound of increasing engine thrust and desperation. The aircraft is now descending at high speed. There is no Mayday call, no time. The final sounds are alarms, raised voices, and the noise of airflow intensifying as the plane dives. 6 minutes after takeoff, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 impacts the ground at extreme speed. Silence follows. What the cockpit voice recorder revealed afterward changed aviation forever. Investigators discovered that the pilots were not facing a traditional emergency. They were fighting an automated system they had never been fully trained to handle. The MCAS system, designed to prevent stalls, was receiving faulty data from a single angle of attack sensor. That incorrect data convinced the system the aircraft was in danger, even when it wasn't. Each time MCAS activated, it forced the nose down. Each time the pilots corrected, the system re-engaged. The CVR shows the crew working together, communicating, reacting, but without knowing the real cause. They were not told that MCAS could repeatedly override their inputs. They followed procedures. They fought the aircraft. But the system kept winning. The tragedy of Flight 302 wasn't just the loss of 157 lives. It was the realization that modern pilots could be placed in a situation where automation silently overpowers human judgment. The consequences were immediate and historic. The Boeing 737 MAX was grounded worldwide. Investigations exposed failures in aircraft certification, training transparency, and regulatory oversight. Pilot training was rewritten. MCAS was redesigned. Redundancy was added. Authority was returned to the cockpit. The voices recorded on Flight 302's CVR became evidence, not of pilot error, but of a system that failed to protect the people relying on it. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 wasn't just another crash. It was the moment aviation was forced to ask a terrifying question. What happens when the pilots do everything right and the airplane still won't listen? And although this last accident was tragic, the next one not only had the entire accident recorded, but even the video of the last seconds before the disaster. We are talking about American Airlines Flight 191. A deafening roar shatters the air. In broad daylight, an American Airlines DC-10 loses its left engine during climb-out. The massive metal cylinder tears away from the wing, ripping cables, hydraulic lines, and any hope for a safe flight. In the control tower, controllers watch in horror as the aircraft banks dangerously, its left wing seemingly dragging it down.
Mayday, Mayday, Flight 305, we have an engine failure, requesting emergency landing.
In the cockpit, the captain and crew fight against a machine that no longer responds. But how did a flight departing with 271 souls in perfect weather reach this moment of absolute chaos? In the next few minutes, you'll hear the full story of American Airlines 191, the deadliest aviation accident on U.S. soil. It's May 25th, 1979, O'Hare International Airport, Chicago. American Airlines Flight 191 is preparing for its route to Los Angeles. The weather is perfect. Families wave goodbye with smiles, and the pilots review final checklists before takeoff. But no one, not in the terminal, not in the cockpit, not even in the maintenance team, suspects that in the left wing, engine number 1 hides a deadly trap. A vital component damaged days earlier during improper maintenance is about to fail. And when it does, there will be no way to stop what's coming. In the next few minutes, this routine flight will become the deadliest air disaster in U.S. history. Days before the flight, the DC-10's left engine had been removed for maintenance. But the method used wasn't the one recommended by the manufacturer. Instead of disassembling it piece by piece, the engine and its pylon were removed together using a crane. This caused invisible microfractures in the structure that attached it to the wing. No one saw them, no one looked for them, but the damage was there, just waiting for the force of takeoff to finish the job. And despite everything, that day, at 3:02 p.m., American Airlines Flight 191 is cleared for takeoff. The roar of the 3 engines shatters the quiet at O'Hare as the massive DC-10 begins its charge down the runway. The aircraft gains speed, the landing gear lifts from the asphalt, and then it happens. With a deafening metallic blast, the left engine tears completely away from the wing. The violent separation also rips away critical hydraulic and electrical lines, stripping control from the left wing. From the tower, controllers watch as the plane banks dangerously. In the cockpit, the captain fights to correct, but the DC-10 has already lost its deadly balance. In just 31 seconds after losing the engine, Flight 191's fate is sealed. At over 270 knots, the plane slams into an open field, barely 1.5 miles from the runway. The explosion is immediate. A fireball engulfs everything in its path. 273 lives are lost in what would become the deadliest air disaster in U.S. history. What you are about to hear is an actual recording of the black box at the time of the accident. Viewer discretion is advised. But first, if you are enjoying this video, please subscribe. It would help me a lot to continue growing. Now, let's go with the recording. In a matter of seconds, American Airlines Flight 191 ceased to exist. The investigation revealed that the cause was a structural failure caused by an improper maintenance method that had damaged the engine's pylon. The tragedy led to immediate changes in maintenance procedures and stricter inspections across the industry. But for the 273 families who lost loved ones, no technical improvement could ever fill the void. Today, a small memorial near O'Hare Airport honors those who departed on that sunny day, reminding us that in aviation, even the smallest error can have irreversible consequences.
But if you think this accident was horrific, the next one was etched in history, when the naval vessel fired a missile at a civilian aircraft, leaving a mark on the world. Iran Air Flight 655.
We got a confirmed kill on that one yet, sir? We gave that guy his wish. He went to see all the... I didn't see a parachute in the plane either.
On July 3, 1988, Iran Air Flight 655 departs Bandar Abbas, Iran, bound for Dubai. The Airbus A300 is operating a short commercial flight over the Persian Gulf. There are families on board, children, tourists, crew members on a routine route they have flown many times before. Inside the cockpit, the pilots speak casually, standard callouts, normal climb. Everything sounds exactly as it should. The aircraft ascends smoothly through controlled airspace, transmitting its civilian transponder code clearly. Nothing in the cockpit suggests danger. The CVR records normal conversation, radio acknowledgements, and the steady hum of the engines. There are no warnings, no alerts, no signs of stress. Then, suddenly, the recording captures an abrupt external sound. Not turbulence, not mechanical failure. Something violent, something foreign. The pilots do not have time to react. There is no Mayday call, no confusion, no raised voices. The sound is followed by immediate destruction. The recording ends. Iran Air Flight 655 is struck mid-air and disintegrates over the Persian Gulf. All 290 people on board are killed instantly. From the cockpit voice recorder alone, the flight ends without fear or awareness. The crew never knew they were in danger. When investigators later analyzed the black boxes, the truth was deeply unsettling. The aircraft had been mistakenly identified as a hostile military target by the USS Vincennes, a United States Navy guided missile cruiser operating in the region during heightened military tensions. Despite transmitting the correct civilian signals and flying a normal commercial route, the aircraft was misclassified as an attacking fighter jet. 2 surface-to-air missiles were launched. The CVR confirms that the pilots had no warning. No defensive maneuvers were possible. No communication was received from the military vessel before the strike. The destruction was instantaneous. The consequences were global and enduring. The incident caused international outrage and permanently damaged relations between Iran and the United States. Aviation authorities worldwide were forced to confront the danger of allowing civilian aircraft to fly through militarized airspace. Procedures for military identification of civilian aircraft were reviewed. Airspace coordination rules were re-examined. Civilian transponder use and military engagement protocols became subjects of intense scrutiny. Historically, Iran Air Flight 655 became a tragic symbol of how quickly military tension can override civilian safety. The voices captured on the CVR tell a haunting story, not of panic or error, but of absolute normality. A flight crew doing everything right, unaware they were flying into a lethal misunderstanding. Iran Air Flight 655 was not lost because of pilot error. It was not lost because of mechanical failure. It was lost because a civilian aircraft was placed in the middle of a military conflict and paid the ultimate price. The silence at the end of that recording remains one of the most chilling reminders in aviation history. Sometimes, the cockpit never hears the danger coming at all.
And although the previous accident was chaotic, the next one left an even worse mark on history when it was also intercepted by a ground-based missile. We are talking about Malaysia Airlines Flight 17.
Malaysian 17, due traffic, proceed direct to point Romeo November Delta. Romeo November Delta, Malaysian 17.
On July 17, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 cruises at 33,000 feet over eastern Ukraine. The Boeing 777 is flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. The weather is stable, the sky is clear. Inside the cockpit, the pilots speak casually. They confirm altitude. They acknowledge air traffic control instructions. Nothing suggests danger. This is not a stressful flight. The CVR captures normal breathing, light conversation, the quiet hum of a long-haul cruise. Then, without warning, a sudden, violent sound tears through the recording. It is not turbulence. It is not an engine failure. It is something far more abrupt. The microphones pick up a sharp shock wave followed by chaos. The cockpit fills with explosive noise. Systems fail instantly. Voices cut off mid-sentence. There is no Mayday call, no confusion, no attempt to recover. The recording ends almost immediately. Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 disintegrates in mid-air, scattering debris across fields and villages below. All 298 people on board are killed instantly. From the perspective of the cockpit voice recorder, the flight ends without fear, without warning, without time to understand what happened. When investigators later analyzed the CVR, one fact stood out above all others. The crew never knew they were in danger. There was no mechanical malfunction, no fire warning, no loss of control scenario. The aircraft was flying perfectly until the final second. The cause was external. Flight 17 was struck by a Buk surface-to-air missile launched from territory controlled by pro-Russian separatists during an active military conflict in eastern Ukraine. The missile detonated near the cockpit, instantly destroying the front section of the aircraft. The pilots were killed immediately. The plane broke apart before anyone on board could react. The CVR confirms this brutal reality. There are no signs of stress, no emergency callouts, no reaction time. The consequences were immense. The crash shocked the world and forced airlines to reconsider flying over conflict zones. Airspace that had remained open during military activity was suddenly seen for what it was, a deadly risk. International investigations took years. Political tensions delayed accountability. But eventually, responsibility was formally attributed, and legal proceedings began against those involved. Historically, Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 became one of the most significant aviation tragedies of the 21st century, not because of a failure in the cockpit, but because of decisions made far from it. The voices recorded on the CVR tell a haunting story. A crew doing everything right, flying a perfectly functional aircraft in a sky that should have been safe. Flight 17 was not lost to error or accident. It was lost to war. And the silence at the end of that recording is a reminder that sometimes aviation's greatest dangers don't come from the aircraft itself, but from the world beneath it.